Welcome, I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a quick check at the headlines this hour. Trump pushes a US peace plan for Ukraine, saying Zelensky must accept it as winter and casualties rise. Putin confirms receiving the plan and warns of more territorial gains if Kyiv refuses. Zelensky says Ukraine will work with the US and Europe and welcomes any realistic proposal to end the war. European leaders react to the US peace plan for Ukraine. European Union's von der Leyen says Kyiv must decide its own future. Germany's Merz and Trump discussed next steps at the advisor level. UK's Starmer says allies will review the plan at the G20, while US Guterres stresses any deal must respect Ukraine's territorial integrity. US President Donald Trump and New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani put aside months of public feuding in a warm White House meeting, trading praise and vowing to work together on crime and affordability in America's biggest city. They then showed appreciation of each other as they were able to move past their differences. The US and Chinese militaries met in Hawaii from November 18 to 20 for frank and constructive maritime security talks. Officials discussed ship and aircraft encounters to improve safety and conduct. China opposed US freedom of navigation operations in the Taiwan Strait and South China Sea. A follow-up meeting is planned in 2026. A bipartisan group of U.S. House lawmakers led by Brian Fitzpatrick moved to bypass Speaker Mike Johnson and force a vote requiring 218 signatures on a bill imposing sweeping new sanctions on Russia, including 500% tariffs on countries buying Russian oil, gas, or uranium. The vote is expected after the Thanksgiving recess. China's top general Zhang Huxia and Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belorusov have agreed in Moscow to deepen military cooperation as both sides shared a new strategic blueprint amid growing tensions. Senior delegations led by Andrei Malyugin and Li Zhejiang also held talks on strategic stability while vowing closer coordination on security issues. China has taken its dispute with Japan to the UN, accusing Tokyo of threatening military action over Taiwan. China vows to defend itself if Japan intervenes, calling such actions a violation of international law. Torrential rains and landslides in central Vietnam have killed 55 people and left 13 missing, with Dak Lak and Khanua provinces suffering the most devastation after rainfall topped 1.9 meters in a week. The disaster has caused $341 million in economic damage, flooded 235,000 plus homes, and ruined 80,000 hectares of crops in one of Vietnam's key coffee and tourism regions. Viewers, US officials and lawmakers are increasingly concerned about a meeting last month in which representatives of the Trump administration met with Kirill Dmitriev to draft a plan to end the war in Ukraine. The meeting took place in Miami at the end of October and included Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Dmitriev, who leads the Russian Direct Investment Fund, one of Russia's largest sovereign wealth funds. According to sources, the meeting resulted in a 28-point peace plan for ending the war. The plan, which was made public earlier this week by Axios, came as a surprise to some US officials in various corners of the administration and has stirred confusion at embassies throughout Washington and in European capitals. It has also prompted criticism from the Ukrainians and their allies for appearing heavily tilted towards Russian interests. Meanwhile, Ukrainians who are troubled by 4 years of war with Russia are showing their skepticism over the US proposed peace plan. The 28-point plan that the US has presented to Ukraine endorses some of Moscow's demands and leaves security guarantees for Kyiv very vague. And Washington threatened to cut key support for Kyiv if it did not agree to the framework of the proposal. Let's listen in to what some of the Ukrainians have to say.
Це повна капітуляція, як на мене. Тобто там такі пункти, як здача Донбасу, признання другої російської мови, ну, це капітуляція повна. Я в лікарні працюю з військовими, так що, не знаю, не то, що втомився якось, не знаю сказати. Ну, не то, що звик, а так. Напевно, треба терпіти далі. І так не дуже довіряв, а це як узнав, так взагалі не дуже. Хоча голосував за нього, ну, в 19-му році. Ну, що це, Міндіч, що це, що, скільки грошей? Не знаю. А яка альтернатива?
Я вважаю, що це де-факто поразка, враховуючи те, як зараз налаштовані американці, які, по суті, наша держава виставляє як нашим головним партнером. Був би я військовим, я думаю, це питання набагато логічніше ставити ним. На жаль, є дуже багато відкладених проблем в країні, які належним чином не адресуються. І замість цього, коли, не знаю, довіра до президента якась загальна, напевно, на найнижчому рівні з початку повномасштабної війни, ми замість якоїсь, не знаю, конструктивної відповіді на реально важливі для нас запитання отримуємо 10-хвилинне звернення, де пояснюються і так абсолютно зрозумілі усім речі.
And now joining us live on the bulletin is Georgi Toloraya, who is professor at the Russia Academy of Science. Joins us live from Moscow. A very warm welcome to you, and thanks for joining us on this bulletin. Now, Professor Toloraya, Kyiv is of the opinion that the peace plan is heavily tilted towards Russian interests. Do you think that is the case from the Russian point of view?
Well, there are many Russian points of view. You know, there are official point of view. There are some positions for the negotiations. So I cannot say that I can really describe the cumulative Russian point of view.
From the Russian government's point of view, Professor.
Hello?
From the point of view of the Russian government as well as the people of Russia.
Sorry, I guess.
Mr. Toloraya, are you still connected with us?
Yes, I'm trying to find. Yes. Okay. So on the one hand, of course, the end of fight and the end of bloodshed is very much welcomed. It's that everybody's hoping for, and whatever negotiation militaries will be welcomed. On the other hand, some of my colleagues are asking themselves, the war is not about territories. The war is not about something material. It's more about the peace and security for the future generations. And if the peace deal would result in keeping Zelensky in power and his use by Europe as a weapon against Russia, and Europe said is preparing for war, then do we need this kind of deal right now? Maybe we'd better strive for the disappearance of this current Nazi regime. There should be some new government elected by Ukrainians, which should be neutral and a good neighbor for Russia. So there are different points of views, and I would say it won't be that easy to find even the deal based on the 28 points by President Trump.
All right, well, requested to stay on with us, Professor Toloraya. We have some more news in connection to the peace plan. Now, Russia's defense ministry says its forces have captured several settlements in eastern Ukraine, including Yampol in Donetsk. However, Kyiv denies the claim, saying Yampol and other towns remain under Ukrainian control. Moscow also claims control of Stavik and Novoselkiva, Malazikova, and a village in Dmitripero. Now, Ukraine reports continued attacks but no confirmed losses. Fighting remains intense around Pokrovsk, a key logistical hub, as Russia advances slowly through Donetsk and Luhansk in its Donbas campaign. Russian forces hold about 19% of Ukrainian territory and continue operations in Zaporizhia, further south. Now, I want to bring back Professor Toloraya into the discussion here. Professor Toloraya, now it appears that Kyiv's forces are clearly fatigued from years of war. Do you see it ceding the Donbas region completely?
Well, I hope that it's of course it's the prerequisite for any deal that Donbas and Lugansk areas which joined Russia officially should be freed from Ukrainian control. It could be done either by agreement or by force. Now the use of force, of military force, is preferred, but this is not necessarily so. The Ukrainians can liberate them, can leave them voluntarily, and I hope this will be the case. But, well, the war goes on. This night there were about 70 drones hit over different Russian regions, and the number of casualties of civil population in Russia for the last couple of months, I think it exceeds 700 people which had been hit by drones and by other Ukrainian offenses. So the war goes on, unfortunately, so far.
Sure. Well, thanks, Professor Toloraya, for joining us on this discussion, and we appreciate you giving us your time. For now, viewers, we shift our focus to some more news coming in. This is on Japan and China. Now, China has taken its widening dispute with Japan to the United Nations, accusing Tokyo of threatening an armed intervention over Taiwan and vowing to defend itself in its strongest language yet in the two-week-old dispute. According to a letter by China's UN Ambassador Fu Kong to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Japanese Prime Minister Sane Takichi committed a grave violation of international law and diplomatic norms when she said a Chinese attack on Taiwan could trigger a military response from Tokyo. Fu Kong also stated that if Japan attempts an armed intervention in the cross-strait situation, it would be considered as an act of aggression, and China will act accordingly in its self-defense under the UN Charter and international law and firmly defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. And Ross Feingold, who is a political analyst, is joining us live from Taipei in Taiwan. A very warm welcome to you, and thank you for joining us here on NewsX World. Mr. Feingold, I want to ask you, what is Taiwan expecting from the UN forum?
Taiwan won't expect much from the UN. It's not a member, but clearly China thinks that citations to UN Charter and various notions of principles that dominate or apply at the UN will further China's argument that the Taiwan issue is an internal issue of China, and that China is not, for example, committing an act of aggression. Now, obviously, China's viewpoints about these issues are disputed. It's disputed by the people and government here in Taiwan, and to some extent, it's disputed by other countries, including Japan and the United States. But it's not a surprise that China and its spokespersons, whether that's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Beijing or its ambassador to the United Nations in New York City, they're going to cite a wide range of arguments, historical, legal, again, the UN Charter, to justify their views on this issue. But ultimately, this has now become a political foreign relations battle in the international arena, and we see people, for example, on social media lining up on one side or the other. And now one thing that we should be watching for is, what do other countries do? Because frankly, a lot of other countries have been fairly conservative about taking sides in this dispute over the past couple of weeks.
In fact, I want to stress on that last point that you raised. Do you think Japan will be reaching out to other countries to garner more support on this issue?
I would expect that Japan has already done that, and their hope would be that foreign ministries or politicians in other countries, including neighboring countries like South Korea, for example, or the Philippines, maybe India, where Japan has an increasingly close political, military, and economic relationship, would say something. And it's very possible that countries will come out and make statements along the lines of, we hope tensions can be reduced and we could all get along. What is really unknown at this point is whether or not countries are going to come out and specifically say, we agree with what the Japanese Prime Minister said. Her views are absolutely correct as far as what Japan should do in the event of a war between China and Taiwan. Now, frankly, are countries going to say something as direct as that as far as supporting specifically what Japan's Prime Minister said? I think that's unlikely. I think it's more likely that countries will make very bland general statements that they hope tensions can be reduced.
All right, Mr. Feingold, thank you for sharing your opinion with us, but I request you to stay on with us as we have some more news coming in. China's Navy says that the US and Chinese militaries held frank and constructive maritime security talks this week in Hawaii. Now, this marks a step in restoring military communications after months of trade tensions. Officials exchanged views on current maritime and air security issues, including encounters between ships and aircraft aiming to improve safety and professional conduct. Now, China reiterated its opposition to US freedom of navigation operations in the Taiwan Strait and South China Sea, calling them infringement and provocations. Both sides plan a follow-up meeting in 2026 to continue these discussions. Let's bring back Mr. Feingold into the discussion. Mr. Feingold, we've seen an elaborating meeting early on the issue, and another one is slated to be held next year in 2026. What do you see should be the key talking points of the next meeting in 2026 after the aggression from Chinese end continues in the area?
We certainly don't know whether or not that meeting will actually take place. It depends on the state of the political relationship at the time. We do know that there's past examples of the Chinese government cutting off the military-to-military contact when the political relationship between the two countries deteriorates. But if they do have a meeting a year from now, they'll probably review whatever incidents occur over the coming months, and there will definitely be incidents. There will be incidents when U.S. and Chinese ships come close, or there will be incidents when Chinese and U.S. aircraft come close, and they'll have plenty to talk about, and they're going to, one side or the other is going to say, you didn't uphold the agreement we made the last time we met about communication flow when our ships or aircraft are nearby each other. But I think it's really important to keep in mind that this meeting still went ahead, despite those tensions between Japan and China that are ongoing at the moment. And the U.S. has a defense treaty with Japan. And in recent days, the U.S. ambassador to Japan and the State Department spokesperson in Washington, D.C., they all issued statements on social media emphasizing the U.S.-Japan treaty. And so frankly, if the United States wanted to make a bolder gesture to show its support for Japan at this current time, it could have canceled or delayed this meeting, but it didn't. So this meeting still went ahead, which I think is a really interesting aspect to what's going on right now here in East Asia.
All right, do we see a dead end going forward, or do you think any positive outcome from this meeting?
One way to look at this is, and it really doesn't matter what the issue is, whether that's military discussions or joint discussions over issues like the flow of fentanyl precursor chemicals and narcotics from China to the United States. One could say that if the two sides are talking, even at a working level, then that's a good thing. That's a positive. It's better to be talking than not talking. And we see that at the moment, President Trump clearly believes that it's better to be in dialogue with China, whether that's meeting with Xi Jinping himself when they met a few weeks ago in South Korea, or proceeding with these working level discussions about various issues. So for now, President Trump has taken the view that he'd rather be in dialogue with China rather than have these bilateral channels cut off.
Well, sure, and that is, I'm sure, in the interest of the United States itself for Trump to be in talks with Xi Jinping. For now, thanks for joining us and sharing your opinion with us, Mr. Feingold, here at NewsX World. And with that, viewers, we now move on to some news that's coming in from the United States, where 4 people were shot at a Christmas tree lighting ceremony in North Carolina. 3 people are in critical condition and 1 in stable condition following the shooting in Concord, which is about 30 kilometers northeast to Charlotte. According to the Concord police, it wasn't immediately clear what led up to the shooting, and they are still questioning the witnesses. The Concord police has stated that they have found video footage of the shooting and will soon let the public know after further investigation. However, the event was supposed to be the city's 28th annual tree lighting ceremony, and where people expected to see featuring Santa, food trucks, the film The Grinch, and fireworks before the shooting occurred. And let's now move on to some more news that's coming in from the United States. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration has issued a warning to major airlines over Venezuela. The FAA cited a potentially hazardous situation due to rising military activity and security risks in the region. Threats could affect aircraft at all altitudes, the notice said. Now, U.S. forces have recently increased their presence, including aircraft carriers, warships, and F-35 jets. Airlines are now required to notify the FAA at least 72 hours in advance of planned flights over Venezuela. And that's all the time that we have for keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.